Hey, guys. So I'm here to ask about something that happened recently, at my ex-wife's wedding to her high school sweetheart. For context, my ex-wife, I'll be referring to her as Sandra, 28F, and I, 30M, had been together for the past 3 years. We met through a mutual friend and hit it off instantly. After the first few dates, we decided that we were dating to marry, and if things went well, then this would not end as a casual relationship. So we were both very clear about what we wanted out of this relationship, and she had every chance to back out of it if she was not ready, but she chose to get divorced 1 month after our wedding. A couple of months after we celebrated our 2-year anniversary, I decided to ask her to marry me and she said yes. Before that, obviously things had been great between us, which is why I had asked her to marry me in the first place. But shockingly, even after we got engaged, there was literally no change in her behavior, and I never would have been able to guess that she had started talking to her ex, her high school sweetheart, Brian, once again. We got married about 9 months ago, and about a month after our wedding, she told me the truth, and we filed for a divorce. It was one of the most difficult decisions that I had to make, but when she told me that she still had feelings for Brian, and she felt like she had rushed into our relationship too quickly, there was nothing else that I could do. I had tried everything. I had tried to tell her that this was just a phase and she was going to snap out of it soon. I tried to be mad at her and tell her that everything would be fine if she just stopped talking to him. And I tried to bargain with her, tell her that we would be able to work out if we went to couples counseling. But even I was aware of the fact that after this, there was literally no way that we would work this out, because when she told me that she had been talking to him since we got engaged, all the trust that I had just evaporated into thin air. And I can't be with somebody that I can't trust. That's pretty basic. So after some argument, I accepted the fact that she still had feelings for her ex and our marriage was over as soon as it had begun. After that day, she packed her bags and moved out, and we started the divorce proceedings. It was relatively straightforward and the divorce was finalized as soon as the waiting period was over, which is just 3 months in our state. Since then, I haven't heard from her, but I have heard about her and what she's been up to, and it hasn't been easy. The friend who actually introduced us to each other, Nina, is a coworker of mine, and she was 7 when she told me that after she moved out and we filed for a divorce, she immediately started going out with Brian again, and they have been living together for months now. 2 months ago, I even learned from her that they were engaged and were getting married in a small ceremony. Nina had been invited by Sandra as well, since they had been really good friends in college, but she decided to decline the invitation because she believed that whatever had happened with me was not right. Thanks to Nina, though, I knew that they were supposed to get married about a week ago. And last week, on the day that they were supposed to get married, I received a call from Sandra's mother's phone number. I knew that it was actually Sandra calling because I had blocked her, and it was shocking because we hadn't spoken to each other since the divorce. I couldn't imagine her having any reason to speak to me right now, but just out of curiosity, I decided to answer the phone call. When I answered, she immediately started rambling about how I needed to clear the air and tell everyone that we were not having an affair and that we hadn't even spoken in the past couple of months. It was clear from the way she was speaking that she had been crying and was quite hysterical. I felt a little concerned, so I had to ask her to slow down and explain what was going on, and she told me that apparently, Brian had decided to just leave her at the altar because he thought that we were still getting together behind his back. The reason he believed this was because a couple of days before the wedding, he had seen a bunch of messages that she had been sending to me over the past few months. I didn't know anything about these messages because I had blocked her right after we filed for a divorce because I didn't want to hear from her anymore. But apparently, she had continued to send me messages, apologizing to me for telling me that I deserve better. The last message that she had sent to me was 2 weeks before the wedding, saying that now that she was getting married again, she was going to apologize one last time, and she hoped that one day, I would find it in myself to forgive her. She told me that she knew that I wasn't receiving messages because she had been blocked, but she still wanted to send them because it was her way of coping with things. Brian, unfortunately, did not approve of this, and instead of just confronting her about it, he started acting weird before the wedding, and on the day of the wedding, he made a speech about how he thought she was still in love with me and called her confused. He announced to everyone present at the wedding that he believed that Sandra was still in love with me and was actually having an affair with me behind his back. So now he was no longer interested in getting married to her because it was quite eye-opening, since if she had found it so easy to dump me after 3 years, it must have been quite easy for her to cheat on him as well. And then, he had walked away from the altar and left her alone there. She had tried to chase him down and talk to him after that, but he just refused to believe anything that she was telling him. So now, the only hope that she had was if I spoke to him personally and told him that there was nothing going on and that I hadn't even received those messages because I had blocked her. I actually thought that it wasn't going to work by a long shot, and I told her that it was a terrible idea to involve me in this, and then I was about to hang up, but she told me that all the time that we had spent together, this was the least that I could do for her. I got really annoyed when she said that, and I told her that I don't owe her anything, especially not after what she did and how she broke us up. Considering what had happened in the past, it was a big deal that I had even answered her phone call. Then, I actually hung up and I blocked the number that she had been calling me from as well. I think I did the right thing, and I think anybody else in my place would have done the same thing as well. But 2 days after that, I received another message from her, and that was on Facebook this time. Since I had blocked her everywhere, she had to make a new account and reach out to me, and she sent me a message saying that her wedding ended up not taking place because Brian believed that she was still interested in me. So the wedding got called off, and for some reason, she was blaming me for it. Apparently, she believes that if I had just spoken to Brian and told him that there was nothing going on and that we truly hadn't been in contact since the divorce, then he might have believed her, and they would have been able to go through with the wedding. But now, the two of them are broken up and she thinks that it's all my fault. I was not going to respond to the message and was just to block her, but I don't know why, I felt like I had to say something. So I texted her back saying that maybe this was karma for what she did to me and maybe she should consider the fact that she deserves this. And after sending that message, I finally blocked her. I didn't think that it was going to be a big deal, but the next day, when I went to work, Nina told me that she had heard from Sandra's parents that she was going through a really bad patch right now. They had contacted her the previous night and told her everything, about how Sandra had tried to get me to speak to Brian on their wedding day and clear the air so they could get married, and I had refused, and then, what I had said about this being karma for her and how she deserved this. Apparently, after receiving that message, she had a total mental breakdown and a severe panic attack. Her parents were naturally blaming me for this, and to my surprise, even Nina said that I shouldn't have replied to her at all. She seemed a little distant from me the day after that and told me that rather than kicking somebody when they're down, I should have just been the bigger person and let it go because clearly, she was going through something, and it was not nice of me to say that to her. That day, even Nina and I ended up arguing over this because I thought that I had done the right thing, and she thought that it had been kind of low of me to kick somebody when they were down. Nina believed that I had every right to be upset with Sandra, but if I really was upset with her, I shouldn't have responded to her at all. She told me that she believed I was a better person than this. I told her that I did not want to be the better person, I wanted to be petty and get it off my chest. So we ended up fighting, and since then, we haven't been speaking to each other, and she is my best friend in the office, so it's been pretty lonely. And right now, I'm wondering if it's even worth it to fight over this at all. Nina had told me that the only way to make this right would be to just talk to Sandra and tell her that I did not mean what I said, and I just said it in the heat of the moment. I didn't even need to apologize necessarily, but just speak to her once and stop her from breaking down over and over again, because that's what had been happening ever since her wedding got called off, and I had just made everything worse by what I said to her. I knew that she was mentally struggling, and it was not surprising. Sandra always had been very fragile, and even when we were together, she had a lot of issues, but I had always been fine with it and took great care of her. But right now, I really don't want to say that I didn't mean what I said about this being karma for her and that she deserved this, because I kind of did mean it. I do feel bad about the fact that she had a mental breakdown over it and that she is going through something so awful, but then again, she also put me through something really terrible. And sometimes, being sorry for things just doesn't cut it. I feel like Nina should understand that, but instead, she's been making me feel guilty, and given the fact that she is one of my closest friends, I have no option but to take her opinion seriously. So that's how I have ended up here, and I want to ask Ida for telling my ex-wife that she got left at the altar because it was karma for how she treated me. Edit. Hey, okay, so a lot of people wanted to know more about Brian and Sandra's relationship with him. I didn't add it in the original post because I personally did not think that it was relevant, but anyway, since you guys asked. So Brian and Sandra got together when they were in their junior year of high school, and they stayed together for about a year before they broke up for the first time. According to what Sandra had told me while we were dating, they had a pretty on and off kind of relationship, and it was mostly Brian's fault. Apparently, he was a really insecure guy and couldn't stand it whenever she spent time with anybody apart from him. So they would constantly end up fighting any time she spoke to other guys or hung out with her friends without him, and after a while, it just got really toxic for her, so she ended up breaking things off with him. But a couple of months after that, apologized and got back together again, and this time, they stayed together for 7 months before he started going back to his old habits again. Then, they broke up again, but they patched up when she started college. They continued to break up and patch up for several years after that until he had to move away for a couple of years for a job. When he moved away, they broke up for one final time, and that was about 2 years before she met me. After he moved away, they did not have any contact, and even when he came back, he tried to contact her, but she was with me, so she didn't respond. Or at least that's what Sandra had told me. I can't be sure anymore because she has lied to me about a lot of things, so she might have lied about this as well. Anyway, when Brian came back here, Sandra and I had already been together for a year and she was pretty serious about me. But Brian was also pretty serious about her, so he continued to try and reach out to her, ignoring the fact that she was already with somebody by then. From what Sandra told me, she did not respond to him at the time, and after a couple of months of texting her without any response, he stopped as well, but after telling her that he was ready to wait for her. Then, when we posted the news of our engagement on social media, he reached out to her once again, and he was pretty desperate this time. He told her that he was ready to wait his entire life if that's what it took for her to come back to him, but he was sure of the fact that they were soulmates and he couldn't let her make this mistake, marrying somebody else while he was still around. He started texting her relentlessly after we announced our engagement and would send her several messages every day. Eventually, She decided to reply to him, only to tell him that she was over him, but I don't think either of them believed that because they still continued to speak to each other. On the last day that we spoke to each other, and she told me everything, she mentioned that she decided to meet him one last time before finally moving on, for some closure. So they met each other 2 weeks after we announced our engagement, and I guess that's when she realized that she hadn't really moved on from him at all. Sandra had told me that when they met, they had only talked to each other for a really long time about everything that had happened in the past, and they had decided to stay friends, but I'm not really sure of what really went down that day. After that meeting, she continued to keep in touch with him, and gradually, she started to develop feelings for him once again. But she still decided to get married to me because she thought that this was just a phase and she would get over it. As it turns out, though, it was not a phase and she did not get over it. And she did not realize it until after we were married and Brian told her that now that she was committed to somebody else for life, he did not feel comfortable talking to her anymore because he knew that he was still in love with her. It was the thought of losing him that made her realize that she was still in love with him, which is when she decided to come clean to me. So essentially, she was fine with how things were going as long as she had both of us, but the second she had to choose, she got uncomfortable and the ugly truth of the situation came out, that she was still in love with him and not me. So that was that, and we filed for a divorce, and here we are now. I guess that's enough context for everyone right now. Update 1. I decided to talk to Nina because it's been almost 9 days since we had our disagreement and our cubicles are right next to each other, so it's pretty awkward to sit next to someone, knowing that they don't like you at the moment. The tension was getting too much for me to handle, so I decided to just rip off the band-aid and speak to her today. When we had our lunch break, I decided to stop her, and I told her that I really valued our friendship and I did not want to break it off over something like this. Because as of now, neither she nor I have anything to do with Sandra anymore, so it would be pretty pointless for us to throw away our friendship over her. We could just agree to disagree on this and call it a day, since it was pretty clear that we couldn't come to a common ground on this one, but then again, it was not necessary for friends to agree on everything. Besides, she hasn't been in my position, so she doesn't really know how I feel. After a couple of seconds of silence, she told me that she was glad that I had decided to take the initiative and speak to her because she herself had been planning on saying the same things to me. She told me that what I had said about her, never having been in my position, was entirely true, and so it was not fair of her to judge me. She told me she had just been mad at me because she had only been thinking about Sandra's mental state, because everyone knows that she has always been very fragile, but while worrying about her, she forgot that even my mental and emotional health had definitely been affected by everything that Sandra had for me through, and she hadn't been thinking about that. Just because Sandra had a meltdown because she couldn't get married, it didn't invalidate my experience, and she was ready to accept that now. So Nina and I were able to reconcile and we're no longer fighting anymore, and it's pretty nice because I got to know from her that Sandra's parents had been pestering her nonstop for the past couple of days, so much so that she ended up blocking them since they were trying to get her to speak to me so I would contact Sandra and apologize to her. I have no idea why Sandra and her parents think that talking to me is the solution to every problem, but I guess that's just because they are used to me being the solution. I used to be her problem, solved for the longest time when we were dating, and like I said, I used to take great care of her. But that's over now and I don't want anything to do with him anymore. So Sandra can continue to feel upset about what I said to her, but I'm not gonna take it back. Update 2. Hey, everyone. So before I say anything else, I would just like to say that it's really cute that you guys are telling me that Nina and I should date, but I think of her as the sister that I never had, and it's just platonic between us. We could never even imagine dating each other, it's just absurd, and we are just always going to be good friends. Anyway, now that that's out of the way, I wanted to talk about what recently happened to me and Sandra. She was supposed to get married almost more than 2 weeks ago, but that never happened, as we all know. Since then, I guess she had been holding out hope that I would contact her again and tell her that I did not mean what I said about this being her karma and that she deserved all of this. Like I had mentioned in my last update, she and her family think that I am the one to blame for everything, and speaking to me will be a solution for everything. I guess she started taking that a little too seriously because today when I came back home from work, she had her car parked outside my house and jumped out as soon as she saw me pull up. It was very obvious that she was in a very delicate state, and I could tell that she had been crying, even when she was in the car, because her eyes were all red and puffy. I really didn't want to fight with her, mostly because she looked pathetic and also because I was really exhausted after work. I asked her to leave politely when I saw her, but she told me that she wasn't going to go anywhere without speaking to me. She said that she had been beating herself up and feeling incredibly guilty about everything that had happened, and now, she had realized it was because she had never properly been able to apologize to me. She told me that she had thought a lot about my comment, that this was her karma for putting me through something like that, and that she deserved this, and now, she believes that if she genuinely apologized to me, and I actually forgave her, then maybe things would get better for her. And maybe she would even be able to get Brian back because he hasn't spoken to her ever since he walked away from the altar. It was already superstitious and I honestly did not know what to say, but it wouldn't cost me a thing to tell her that I forgave her, and if it made her feel any better, then I didn't have any qualms doing it. So she told me, quite formally, that she was sorry about everything that had happened between us, and she wished that she had been honest and transparent with me about everything right from the beginning. It was quite awkward, but I told her that I forgive her and she's free to move on now. I didn't know what to expect after that. I thought that she was probably just going to thank me and leave, but instead, she hugged me and just started crying. She told me that she really meant what she had said about being sorry for what she had put me through, and told me that she wished that she had been more honest with me right when Brian had contacted her, and then, she started telling me that I wasn't wrong for what I did, by refusing to talk to Brian on the day of her wedding, or even saying that this was her karma. She was the one who had overreacted and had been getting defensive because she was just not ready to face the facts. But now, she knew that she had been wrong all along, and she was really ashamed of herself. She told me that not only had she disappointed a good man like me, but she had also lost a good friend, and the person that she had done it all for, Brian, was not even in her life anymore and was refusing to speak to her. While she was telling me all this, she was still hugging me and crying, and I didn't know what to do, so I just let her cry herself out. It was kind of shocking, but after a while, she let me go and she told me that she was really grateful that I had found myself to be so kind to her, even after what she had done. I was quite taken aback by her behavior, but nevertheless, I told her that it was all good and that I genuinely hoped that she found what she was looking for. I also suggested that she should go back to therapy because clearly, she's having a very tough time dealing with her life right now. When I said that, she looked like she was going to start crying again, but, thankfully, she did not. She told me that she had been thinking about it herself because ever since her life had started going downhill, she had been acting crazy and she could feel it herself. She had been having several panic attacks every day and couldn't go more than 3 days without a complete breakdown, which was obviously not good. I felt really bad for her, but there was not much that I could do, so I just told her to hang in there and hope for the best. Then, she finally got back into her car and thanked me for everything and then started driving away, and I finally got to ease up a little and go inside my house. It was very strange, but I guess it was the kind of closure that both of us needed. I'm not sure about her, but at least I definitely needed this because now, I feel like I can move on from her. I don't have any grudges against her. I really do hope that she finds happiness in her life because she needs it. And as for me, I know that I'll be able to move on soon enough, but I feel a lot lighter now since I have forgiven her and put an end to that chapter of my life. Update 3. Hey. So it's been almost a year since I got divorced and I haven't spoken to Sandra in a really long time, but Nina told me that she has heard from a couple of her college friends that she and Brian were able to make up again and eloped a couple of months ago. Good for them, and I really hope that they are able to make it work this time. I'm also doing much better now and I'm focusing on work. I tried to go out on a couple of dates, but it was just not working out for me, so I've decided to work on myself instead. I've started working out, and journaling, and I even have plans to travel. And I'm also going to start working on my business model since I've always wanted to start a business of my own, and Nina is also into the idea, so I might have a partner in her already. And no, we are still not dating and quite happy as platonic friends. In fact, Nina has started dating one of my cousins, and I was the one who was responsible for setting them up, so I'm quite proud of myself because they're going really strong. I guess this is not too much of an update where there is going to be a lot of drama. It's just a life update that I thought I should share with you guys because people know that things do get better. I'm over Sandra and everything that happened. I'm just looking out for my own life now. After that last interaction that we had, where I forgave her and stuff, we didn't speak, but I did unblock her. We are not exactly following each other on any platform, but she did me on my birthday and so did I. Maybe I loved her at one point in time and maybe she did too, but right now, we are both just civil to each other and we just want to avoid any drama. I don't think we will ever be able to be friends, but this is as good as it gets and I'm fine with it. My life is going really well, and in a way, I'm glad that whatever happened because I think it made me a much stronger person than I thought I was. I'm definitely not saying that I would wish something like that upon anybody else, but all I'm saying is that it worked out for me, and I guess eventually, it does work out for people no matter what they're going through. At the risk of sounding even more corny, I'll end this update here. Thank you so much for checking up on me. It means a lot.